So it's an interesting game that we play here because in a way we have to constantly be battling our cognitive mind and our default setting about what it means to be progressing or moving forward, being successful. It says that the measurement of success or progress is clearly delineated. So in this case, it would be in the form of a big change or a big sensation, a big revelation. So you kind of have two challenges here. One is to stay connected to your sensation, and then two is to not evaluate your process. The intention of this program is not about learning how to move your shoulder, walking different, or having this revelation about this part of your spine, though it's likely those things and more will happen. But what this program is about is an experience, creating a very unique experience. And what's wild is that it's kind of a chicken or an egg situation, that as you start to soften your grip on clear results and clear progress and clear evaluation and management, your movements start to change. And the way that you feel starts to change. And the way you feel about your movement starts to change. And then when you're doing things in a way that's really just focused on the sensation and what does this feel like? What does that feel like? Can I feel the difference between this tiny thing and that tiny thing? It creates a state change. So that's what's particularly important about this experience is, can you allow yourself to start moving toward a state change? And the more you practice being with your sensation, it becomes easier. So to start, pay attention to the quality of space. A quality of space as your chest or your ribs move into the area outside around you. So you listen for the space that's between your arms and your body, space between your legs. Also the space in front of your legs and outside of your legs, to the sides of your legs, sides of your ankles, sides of your feet. And then what kind of space do you feel behind you? Is there a space around your low back, behind your knees? Keep your attention on all the spaces. Can you just use your attention to change your experience? And then see, how is that different if you then shift your attention to the way that your whole body is giving its weight to the mats, and that different parts of you are pressing into the mats at different degrees. Really feel the gravity of yourself moving down into the mats. There's something about the space that allows the gravity, and there's something about the gravity that allows the space. Bring your attention to the back of your pelvis, the weight, the gravity in the back of your pelvis. And then start to deliberately press wherever you already feel the pressure of your pelvis. Exaggerate your own pattern there and press and release. Can you feel for an area of space just above your pelvis, somewhere around your low back? Can you listen for this interplay of leaning into gravity, but then also allowing for the space? And then feel for the next heaviest part of your back. And how do you drop your weight in that next heaviest part of your back, the next part of your back going up? And as you're continuing dropping your weight of your upper back and releasing, can you listen for the space behind your neck? Can you reflect your sensation back between the dropping of your upper back and then somehow a lightening of the space behind your neck? And what's the interplay? And maybe feeling the space behind your neck actually means a dropping of your skull. What's the interplay there between the heavying of your skull and the lightening of your neck? And then start to play with this a little bit on your own. Maybe you start to play between your shoulder and your neck, or between your hand and your wrist. Find a place that there's a clear delineation of sensation. This is heavy and this is light. And start to play with deepening into the feeling of gravity. Make sure that feels clear. And once that feels clear, then start playing with, well, what does the space feel like? And then start going back and forth. And what you might start to notice is that you can have a direct influence. That the deepening into gravity allows for the spaciousness of the space. And see if you can continue with this and start to create an impression of yourself. So start down at your heels. And where your heels are heavy, press. And feel how the next lightest part gets a little lighter. And then release. Just go back and forth a couple times, starting both your heels, press. And listen for where there's a lightening. Higher up from your heels, higher up yourself. And then feel the next part of you going up your legs that's heavy. And press. Release. And then skip up to the next part of you that's heavy and press. And then gradually go up to the next part of you that's heavy and press. Release. And when you get to the level of your shoulders, find the heaviest part of your shoulders and press both of those. Release. Continue that going down your arms, the next heaviest part, press. Release. Next part of your arms, your wrists, your hands, press. Release. Start to move that sensation pattern back up your arms to your shoulders, from your shoulders to the base of your neck. Pressing, releasing the back of your head. And then start to recreate your own pattern so that not only do you press where you're heavy, but you also kind of lift where you're light. You might start to feel a bit like a wave. Press, release, gravity and space. Gravity, space, gravity, space. And for the last few moments here, see if you can start to exaggerate. Exaggeration of the pressing, exaggeration of the lifting. Can you start to feel the way that you can create space by pressing, and you can create gravity by lifting? And then just leave that, take a little rest for your brain. And then come onto your back and bend your knees and stand your feet. Interlace your fingers behind your head. And start to play with where you can lean into gravity so that lifting your head as light and spacious, you move into space as lightly as you can. And then bring your head down and in your hand, have turn your face to the right, but you're still holding your head in your hands, your face to the right. And then in that situation, where do you lean onto gravity and lift your head? What do you do with your breathing? Is your breathing leaning into gravity, or is your breathing actually evoking space as you're trying to lean into gravity? And bring your head down and turn your head the other way. Okay, and then bring your head down, bring your arms down. Lengthen out your left leg, your right foot standing. Where is the gravity to lift your right hip? How does your hip move into space from leaning into gravity? Where's the place that your right foot has the most clear connection to gravity? And then maybe there's a place for your foot to lean into gravity so that there's space in your hip and there's space in your low back. There might even be space up your ribs. And then switch your legs and find gravity with your left foot. Find space with your left hip. What about your right leg? As you're finding easy space with your left hip, is your right leg using gravity or is your right leg using space? As your right foot's leaning into gravity, are your shoulders trying to come into space or are your shoulders using gravity? Your head? And then bring your left leg down. Bring your right arm up. Float it up in the air. And how does your right shoulder start to experience space? Where do you find the gravity? Now, what if you wanted so much space under your right shoulder that your arm started to float right up to the ceiling? How high can your arm reach to the ceiling by way of leaning into gravity? How many places can you lean on so that you're not stretching your arm, you're not straining your arm, you're not using a muscular contraction to lift your arm, you're playing with all the places that you can get support into gravity, and then your arm is just there, floating away. What are your legs doing? Are your legs in space or your legs in gravity? Now, if you really listen carefully, as your arm is floating up to the ceiling, you'll feel piece by piece by piece by piece where you can lean more. And as you lean more and more and more onto your left side, more and more of your right side is going to be able to float. You're just floating up to the ceiling. That's it. Your right arm is floating up. Only your right arm is floating up to the ceiling. But how many parts of yourself can come with your right arm? Your right shoulder is floating because your left shoulder is supporting it. Your right ribs are floating because your left ribs are supporting it. Maybe even your right hip is starting to get spacious. If your left hip is starting to find gravity, maybe you need to bend your knee in order to find gravity in your left leg. And play with how much you can float your arm up into the air and then come back. There's so many places you can lean on. Feel the places, all the places you're touching the floor. Lean on those places. And then play with where do you lean on more and where do you lean less. Okay, and then rest with that for a second. Bring up your left arm. And feel where can you get support for your left arm floating up in the air. Your left hand is reaching more and more and more toward the ceiling, but not because you're using your muscles to lift and extend and reach your arm, but because you're playing more and more with where you can start to move. And your hand is in the air, but where in the air? It could be all kinds of places in the air. There's all sorts of air around you. There's all kinds of space. So maybe your arm is in the space over there. Maybe your arm is in the space over there. But keep finding the space for your arm based on where you lean into gravity. Lean. Listen to yourself. Listen to all the places you're touching the floor. Lean onto all the places you're touching the floor. And then feel it. Oh, if I lean my right leg, my left leg follows. One part is getting heavier, one part is getting lighter, one part is getting heavier, one part is getting lighter. One side floats as the other side leans. What stops your arm from continuing to float? What's stopping you from leaning and leaning and leaning until you're sitting? Till you're kneeling, till you're standing? Is your breathing with gravity or is your breathing with space? Right? When do you want your breathing to be with space? And when do you need your breathing to be with gravity? Okay, now take a little break. Shift your attention to your right leg. And stand your right foot. And use gravity in your right foot to gradually push you onto your left side and then come back. And listen, where do you experience space spontaneously as you're leaning into gravity with your right foot? But for now, see what it's like to keep all of you listening to gravity, just for now. Still just listening to gravity. Your arms are listening to gravity, your hands are listening to gravity. And you're leaning into your right foot, finding all the possible passageways for your hand and your arm, beside you, above you, over the top of your head, but for now, still in gravity. So you can start finding a way to sweep your arm along the floor, over your head, in front of you until you're on your side, and then reverse it. But all with the intention on your right leg, your right foot. So for now, your hand stays in contact with something. Maybe it's your own head, maybe it's the floor, maybe your elbow needs to stay quite bent, maybe it's your face. But for now, be very clear. Your attention is in your right foot, and your intention is to roll over onto your side. Let your your right arm drag along the floor, over your head, maybe not over your head, but across your head or across your face, till you're on your left side, and come back many times. Lean into gravity. Feel this relationship with space. So space is what is helping you turn onto your side. Then there's also the gravity of what you're leaning on, right? Your left hip, your left ribs, your left shoulder. And so as you roll from your back onto your side, see if you can bend up both of your knees once you arrive on your left side. Bend both of your elbows in a little bit toward your knees. And then reverse that, but again, with your right leg. Your right leg and your right foot is what's leading. Your arms move up and over your head, somehow on the floor, maybe across your face if you don't comfortably reach above your head. Yeah. And then you're onto your side. And just for now, you're just coming onto your left side, returning onto your back, left side, returning onto your back. Listening for space and gravity. And then the next time you're on your back, start to use your left leg. Find gravity with your left foot. Have your attention be on your left leg, your intention to roll onto your right side. And all the places that you lean in gravity. And because you're leaning with your right side, your left side's moving through space. Notice if there's places that you get a little too stuck in gravity or a little too stuck in space. And then pause for a second on your back. And then roll over onto your right side in this way and stay there. You can have your head on your arm if you like, sure. Have your knees bent up in front of you. And now this time, see if you can start to feel your pinky toe of your top foot, your left foot. Your pinky toe, how does your pinky toe start to lift into space? Where does your pinky toe get gravity from your knee, from your thigh maybe? So your pinky toe lifts and it lifts your foot into space and then comes back down. Your foot lifts into space, where do you lean your gravity? And then come back down. So your pinky toe lifts your whole foot away from your bottom foot into space, and then it comes back down. Where do you lean on? Where's your gravity to lift your pinky toe and to lift your foot? Do you have gravity in your right leg? Okay, and then leave that and now see how you can start to feel space with your left knee. Keep your left foot resting on your right foot. Feel gravity in your left foot in order to lift your left knee and come back. Left knee away from your right knee. What does your foot lean on? How spacious can you be? How light can you lift your left knee by leaning on something? And then leave your left knee resting on your right knee and start to lift your left heel. How do you lift your left heel? Where do you lean on in order to lift your left heel so that your left foot, again, lifts from your right foot. Your left heel floats up into the air and comes back. When you lift your left heel, what do the toes of the left foot do? Can the toes on your left foot stay with gravity even as you're starting to lift your left heel into the air? Gravity doesn't have to keep you on the floor. You can feel gravity without being anchored, can't you? And then see if you can go back and forth. So one time you lift your foot from the heel and your knees stay together. And then you lift your knee and your feet stay together. Feel where you lean and feel what floats. Now rest for a second. So you can experience gravity without actually leaning or pressing into the floor. So just play with, again, the same idea. First, lifting your knee as you're finding gravity in your foot, and then finding gravity in your knee as you're finding space in your foot, just like you just did. Go back and forth. But gradually, you're going to see what happens if, as you're bringing your knee down to your knee, you start lifting your foot away from your foot. So you never actually touch foot to foot, knee to knee. And they keep alternating. As your knee is lifting, your foot's dropping toward your other foot, but before it touches your other foot, you change. And you let your knee drop into gravity, but not completely, as your foot's lifting. But then before your knee touches your knee, you change. Good. And then rest your leg on your leg. Now have your left arm resting on the floor in front of you, and have your right arm resting on the floor in front of you. Have your head resting on the floor. And see if you can lean on your right arm as you float your left arm up toward the ceiling. And maybe back a little bit behind you and come back. So you lean on your right arm as your left arm comes into space. And then you come back. And maybe follow the movement of your arm with your eyes and your head. And as you continue, you'll start to also be able to shift your attention between the feeling of your arms and the feeling of your legs. And notice that as you're leaning on your right arm, you're also leaning a little bit on your right leg. And as you're floating your left arm up and back, at some point, you could slightly float your left knee and come back. And for now, your feet stay together. But you're not lifting your arm. You're not using a muscular action in your arm. This arm is floating as a response from the other arm. And if it's not yet floating, then you just stay where it can float, where you can feel some element of an exchange between resting on the right arm and floating the left arm. Resting on the right knee and floating the left knee. And then give yourself a little rest. Lean onto your left side and come onto your left side. And then rest your right leg on your left leg and lean your right knee on your left knee as you lift your right foot. And then feel the space in your right pinky toe. So float your right pinky toe up, but then feel the gravity in your big toe bringing you back down. And even though your attention is on your toes, can you still listen for gravity along the left side of your ribs and your left hip, your left shoulder, your left knee, your left foot, your left arm, left side of your face? And then a few times, let your whole forefoot, let all your toes hang in gravity and lift your heel. And then let your toes continue to hang into gravity to bring your foot back down again. You try to differentiate how your right heel can find space. When you lean on more, so your right heel can find space. And then your right forefoot surrenders to gravity to bring your foot back down. And then lean your right foot on your left foot and start to float your right knee. And then start to go back and forth so you feel where you can lean in order to float your knee. And then you feel where you can lean in order to float your foot. And then with that interplay of gravity and space, see what happens if you lift your knee, and then you start to lower your knee, and then you lift your foot. So your knee never quite touches your other knee before you start to drop your foot. And then before your foot touches your foot, you start to lift or drop your knee. Yeah. And then rest your right leg on your left leg. And again, see what it feels like to float your whole right leg up in the air and come back. Then leave your right leg resting on your left leg. Bring your right arm out in front of you on the floor. Lean on your left arm in order to float your right arm up toward the ceiling and go back a bit. Follow with your eyes and your head. What are you leaning on? Maybe you can enjoy the feeling of leaning the whole left side of you into the floor. Your right arm is taking flight because you feel how you're leaning onto your left arm, your left shoulder, the back, the side of your head, your left hip, your waist maybe, your left leg. Mm-hmm. Now, what if your arm floats all the way back to the floor behind you? When does it start to take your left knee? When does the weight of your arm going back start to lift your left knee? As your arm goes back, when does the gravity of your arm is first in space, right? And then as it goes back behind you, suddenly it starts to be in gravity, doesn't it? When your arm starts to catch gravity, then your left knee starts to find space. And then when your right arm comes back to the floor behind you, and you felt that moment that your left knee has found space, then keep your right arm on the floor behind you. Stay there and start playing with increasing the space of your left knee. How could you keep leaning exactly until maybe your left foot lifts a little bit in the air and then comes back? Mm-hmm. Keep your right arm on the floor behind you, your left arm on the floor in front of you. Yes, you're kind of in a twisted situation. And then you're just listening for space in your left knee that will take your whole left leg, maybe up a little bit, and then come back. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not an instruction, it's a feeling. Don't worry about doing it the right way. Feel the gravity of both of your arms and listen to what can change in your left leg. Can you find enough gravity to lift your left foot? Listen how you lean and float to come onto your right side. And can you start to lean on your right side so that you start to float your left arm and your left leg up toward the ceiling? And then as your left arm and leg are floating in the air toward the ceiling, at some point you might start to feel their gravity going to the left, which would bring you onto your back. And then go onto your other side. And start to see how you can lean on your left side to start to float your right arm and your right leg gently up into the air until they start to float to the right and you feel the gravity of your right arm and your right leg and they bring you onto your back. Come on your other side. Can you lean on your side to float, and then when you feel your other side come to gravity, let that side rest into gravity. Keep a little bend in your elbows and your knees. Okay. Now, whichever side you're on, or if you're not on your side, come onto your side, one of your sides. And just start playing with how you can lean onto the side that you're leaning on and float your arm and your leg up toward the ceiling. Listen for the feeling of space reflected in the feeling of gravity, but then catch gravity back home where you just were. So you lean on your bottom side to float your top side up toward the ceiling, but then lean again and feel gravity bringing you back down again. So you start to really listen to the difference between when the side that's floating is in space and then the side that's floating finds gravity. And notice that you're starting to push off of your bottom side, the side you're leaning on, and then you lean into your bottom side. You push off of it and you lean into it. Push off of your bottom side and then lean into it, all of it. Your arm, your head. You lean on the side that's leaning and you float the other side and you come back. And do that several times until you can feel the difference between those two possibilities, pressing or leaning, pressing or leaning. And then when it makes more sense, then you might play with, can I press until I float and then I lean onto the other side? And then I press on that side until I float and I lean on the other side. Do we have a problem with culture in the room? Is there something about your culture that tells you where your legs are supposed to be? Where is gravity? Where is space? What's the difference between pressing and leaning? So now, if we go back to where we started, you were exploring with your arms. So take one of your arms and float it up in the air. And just like we were playing with before, now see what happens. Now that you've integrated some more parts of yourself and some more possibilities into your movement repertoire, now see what starts to happen. If you continue floating your arm up and up and up toward the ceiling, start to listen to all the different possibilities that you can find about how you can lean, how you can use your legs, where you press, where you lean, where you float. Ah, exactly. Keep going, keep going, keep going, like a huge balloon. Yeah, it's lifting you up even more. Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah. I do it with the other arm for a while. Maybe the other arm is a little bit more clear to you. Here's another funny little game. So you have your attention, which is hard because now your attention's in many places, right? But then what about your intention? What about if your intention is to eventually become one with the sky? If your intention is that you actually want to find a way to float until your hand touches the ceiling. How close to the ceiling could your hand get? Where are you looking with your eyes? Where is your intention? Have your intention be the ceiling. And it's surprising that it might actually help you find how to lean and how to press when you're a little clear on, oh, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to go. If you find a nice place to lean, then your head might also float, right? But it's possible your arm could have so much space from leaning so clearly on your hips and your legs that your arm is actually just an extension of your spine and your head's an extension of your spine. Can you get onto your knees? Can you lean until you're on your knees? All right. Oops. Let's not overdo it. Take a rest. how does this madness influence the way that you feel yourself on the floor? And wrap your attention around to the way you feel your volume on the side and then the front and on the other side. Because, all the parts are just connected to all the other parts. It's not really like this side, that side, good part, bad part. It's all one thing. So how does that show up for you as you're laying there? Your whole sense of self, sensory self-image. You can take about 15 or 20 minutes now for yourself.